Hey guys, how's it going? This week we're covering chapter 14. Once again, as I always try and fail, I will try to keep this short. Chapter 14 is about risk mitigation. As I was looking over this chapter, it made me remember about the times that I was studying for the CISSP exam. And after reading this, and I woke up from my coma. When I woke up, I was in a fetal position, to be honest. Just remembering this stuff just brought back so many horrible memories that I was just like, what am I doing this for? No, I'm just joking. It's good stuff. So once again, as I always say, you should really read the chapter, and or at least take a good gloss over. And I'm just going to talk about a few things that I find are important or of interest and within this chapter. So on page 568, we got some things like at the bottom here, transference. So there's different things you can do with risk. So some are you can transfer risk. So that would be typically like insurance. That's risk transference. So in terms of health insurance, for example, you're not taking away, when you pay for health insurance, you're not taking away the chance that you might get injured, but what you're doing is financially you're transferring that risk from yourself to the insurance company. And so that's primarily what they're talking about in this case as well with transference. So it says, risk transference makes the third party responsible for the risk. There's also risk avoidance. So you find something that like a certain activity that can bring a certain risk, and so by performing risk avoidance, you avoid that activity that would encourage that risk from happening. I can't speak today. And then with mitigation, you actually confront the risk and you find a way to get over the risk and to you take care of it. Let's see, on page 569 you have risk management, and you have technical and operational. So management's like so are administrative in their nature and are the laws, regulations, policies, practices, and guidelines that govern the overall requirements and controls. Technical risk control types involve enforcing technology to control risk, such as antivirus software, firewalls, and encryption. Operational covers operational procedures to limit risk. So that could be in this case, an example it gives is like surveillance videos and barricades, that sort of thing. I'm not going to go over access rights on page 570, but there's something else I want to talk about, which is change management. And I want to talk about this for a few minutes because this is so important in what we do and pretty much in any kind of thing. So, for instance, if you're in charge or the project manager of a server or server farm, and or in charge of a long-term project, you're going to want to, every time you make a change in something, you're going to want to have some sort of documentation that lists those changes that were made. In case something happens or there's some issue, you can always look back at hey, yeah, we made this change. We have a document right here. We made this change at such date, such as such time. Here's what we did. Here's who approved it, and that it's just good business That way you have accountability. You know what's been changed. You know what's been going on. Because like if you go from like working production network, changes made, changes documented as well, and then after that change is made to the network, then like everything all like the crap hits the fan. Excuse my French, and just like things are not working properly anymore. And when you have management breathing down your neck, when you're trying to pressuring you to find out what's going on, and then you're feeling the pressure to find out what's going on, if you have that documentation, that might help you to understand what's going on within your network and why things are failing. And like I said, this is not just for, to me, this is anything major that you do at work. Like you want to document. And then you want to document important things that go on, like I said, in a project or something you do differently. Say if you want to be a chef, if you got a recipe, if you make notes on what something you change to the recipe and it turns out to be fantastic, you don't have to worry about trying to remember what you did. You already have it written down. So that's why I'm kind of harping on this. Excuse me. So on page 572, it talks about things like incident management, risk calculation, risk likelihood. So risk calculations, you have on page 572, it talks about qualitative risk calculation. And also there's quantitative. So, okay, students, what's the difference between qualitative? That's right. Now, with qualitative, you try to do, well, I'll just say what it says here. It'll be better off that way. This approach uses an educated guess based on observation. For example, if it's observed that the customer database contains important information, or there would be assigned a high asset value. Also, if it's Jesus, so boring. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's kind of fun to read, but so pretty much, if you just look at the last sentence, I don't know why this wasn't the top. Qualitative risk typically assigns a numeric value. Thank you. I don't know why you have to. This is what kills me about IT professionals writing books. I just like to get all wordy. So the second approach, quantitative risk calculation, is considered more scientific. Instead of arbitrarily assigning a number or label based on observation, quantitative calculation actually attempts to create hard numbers. And so that's more realistic, I guess. Sometimes you can't assign a value. Sometimes if you got something that's old, I don't know. So it's just sometimes, okay, what I'm trying to say is sometimes you can't place a value. So you have to give one. You have to do a qualitative, like, okay, how important is this device for us to protect? Like for instance, if you're a security admin or the CIO and things start breaking down and there's big, huge problems, as part of your recovery program, your recovery steps for your network or for your infrastructure, you really need to assign a value of what's important and what's least important. And things that are the most important to your operation are the things you need to bring up first. And so that's an example of what like a qualitative risk calculation could be. Then, and so if I just confused you, I'd just recommend reading what the book says. The book is just really wordy. Let's see. On page 572, we talk about risk likelihoods. You got mean time between failure. So it's the average or the mean amount of time until a component fails and cannot be repaired and must be replaced. So it's pretty much, so mean time between failures, the good amount of space when things work. There we go. Then the good amount of time things work until it fails, and you can't just fix it. You got to replace it. Mean time to recovery. That's a little more self-explanatory, but it's the amount of time that you go from, excuse me, from fail, recover. So break, fail, recover. How much time? What's the average amount of time for something to be brought back up? The mean time to failure. The basic measure of reliability for systems that cannot be repaired. So once again, critical systems. This is like especially prevalent in SCADA. You got a system that is really important but has really old components. I can guarantee you that these companies really do track the mean time to failure for these components that can't be replaced, because they're going to do their best to make sure that mean time to failure is as long as possible. Here's something I never heard of: failure in time. It's a calculation. Calculation is another way of reporting mean time between failure. Interesting. Okay. Once again, we gotta create things to make yourselves seem important. On page 574, it talks about things like single loss expectancy. So we got some math, and this is why I'm not a math major. But once again, if you plan on sticking with the security world, you're gonna have to learn this if you want to take and pass the CISSP. Even though, yes, I failed the CISSP by a few points. I was off by 12 points. And I promise you, I got questions like this on page 574 that talked about things like single loss expectancy, or the annualized loss expectancy. Single loss expectancy is the expected monetary loss every time a risk occurs. Excuse me. The SLE is computed by multiplying the asset value times the exposure factor. So asset value meaning the value of the asset, and the likelihood, the exposure factor, which is the proportion of the asset. The exposure factor is the proportion of the asset's value that is likely to be destroyed by a particular risk. So the exposure factor is expressed by a percentage. And also you have the AL, the annualized loss expectancy, is the expected monetary loss that can be expected for an asset due to a risk over a 1 year period. Yay. And then going further afterwards, it talks about different policies, like acceptable use policies. That's good to have. So that's where you outline, okay, what's the company's position on how an asset or a computer should be used. How should it not be used? That sort of thing. Oh yeah, here's a big one. Page 585. Awareness and training. Compliance. So there are a number of laws and regulations. I'm speaking on America here. So America has a number of laws and regulations, and also some of these some states have additional laws and regulations that govern um, for companies, like how certain things are handled, like personal identifiable. I can't talk today. Personable identifiable information, or things like health records or financial records, and that sort of thing. Even with human resources, that's human resources, and for a company that deals in personal identifiable information all the time. So all that needs to be protected. You don't want people to be able to get in and get in and steal information, or ruin information, or steal information, or I already said steal, or delete information. But you need, like, it's upon you as it's upon the company to protect that information, that data, to the best of its ability. Otherwise, it can get in big trouble. And if something were to happen to the company, the guess who's going to get in trouble? Not the chief information officer, probably you, the little guy, who or middle management guy who's just trying to do his best with what little resources they have to secure the network. They will get the shaft there, and they'll get kicked out, fired, or whatever. Or depending on how serious the crime is or serious the issue, there might be jail time. There might be lawsuits. That's a big deal. So, with that being said, if there's like a federal investigation going on or whatnot, one of the things they're going to look at is they're going to look at your training, not just you as the IT person, but like the training of the individuals who are handling the data, the IT people, or the human resources people, the regular staff members who work at the company. They all need to be trained on what is applicable for what they do, but also on how to handle that data and whatnot. So that's where, like, having a standard operating procedure comes into play for a company. They should have that sort of thing already lined up. That's where rules and regulations, a company's rules and regulations governing ethics, or governing data, protecting data. I mean, all that, like, that has to be planned out. And when things are planned out, then that's great. But also, the people have to be trained in how to implement these programs. So if you got a program to protect data, okay, then people need to be taught how to protect data. And you need to keep records of that too. And it's just crazy. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. It may not seem important until you have that oh dang it moment when you have the feds coming over, knocking on the door, or just some situation. I'm trying to think of something funny to say, and I can't because it's a big deal. And I mean, shoot, it's just just can't be put aside. Training's got to happen. Policy's got to be made, and policy's got to be followed. Okay, so I'm done rambling. But lastly, I do want to mention, for extra credit towards a quiz, I want you guys to just write me a few sentences about the Sarbanes-Oxley Act and the Graham-Belchley Act. I think I'm pronouncing those correctly. So just those two acts. Just write me a few sentences, doing a compare and contrast to each other, and send me an email. Okay? Thanks. Love you guys. All right. Take it easy. Bye.